show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Dutta, your host for the day on the Quiet Warrior Show. Hey, we're live streaming across Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel so that you can get the production as we release it. You're peeking into the studio today as we interview an amazing guest. This is somebody actually who connected to me in so many ways. I was blown away when I got the intro. We'll tell you more about that. And so without further ado, I just want to read you something first, by the way. This is Michael Anthony. That's the guest's name. And he's an entrepreneur, coach, podcast host, award-winning speaker, best-selling author, advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. Now, I read that, and then I sent a note and I said, hey, check out the narrative on my show, The Hero's Journey, and send me a few lines about why you think that fits. And so I thought I'd get back a few vanilla lines. Here's what I got back. And it's not vanilla, man. I was born to a hyper-abusive drug addict mother who cut my finger off at 4 years old. A stepfather you pray you never have, a racist grandmother that pushed me into an identity crisis. By the time I was 9, my family was in poverty and often homeless, all while being a member of the Mormon Church. Now, the story gets better, everybody, but that just hit me hard, and I thought, wow, there's a lot more to this man, so let's welcome him to the stage from the green room, Mr. Michael Anthony. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Tom, thank you, my friend. Super excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, dude, I mean, we're going to get into the story. Obviously, you've told your story many times. I admire what you're doing after I read your book. Hold up the book there. We got a new book going on here, everybody.
Yeah, so this is Think Unbroken. Let me move this. You can see in the camera here. Yeah, Think Unbroken, Understanding Overcoming Childhood Trauma. Tom, basically, man, it was just the book that I felt like I needed 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's how most people create books. And I'm lucky enough to have pushed that to a #1 bestseller and just sold a lot of copies. And, you know, what's so funny and interesting about that, though, I've sold tens of thousands of copies, and there's like 8 reviews online. And the reason why, which I understand, is that child abuse is still the elephant in the room. People don't want to talk about it. It's dark, it's scary, and yet it infiltrates our society in ways that, dude, I don't even think people really understand. So, you know, I wrote that book and I said, let this be a companion for people like me who need it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, we're going to honor that. You know what? I was going to do this later, but we're going to have some fun and do it up front. So everybody, let me just first of all bear all to you that as a fellow author, what Michael said, authors, nobody knows them. They write a book, and unless you read their books and you write a review for it, we want to get the word out. We want to celebrate their work. I'm going to encourage you, once we show you a bit about the book, to get this book. Michael will tell us how to write a review, post it on Amazon or Goodreads, and to lead by example. Michael, I have a surprise for you. Here we go. I'm going to share the review I've just posted on Amazon. We're going to read it together, or I'll read it to you. The most real book I have read in a decade. Author Anthony bears all. Hard-hitting, invigorating, self-compassion. In these pages are stories that the majority of adults will relate to. The courage to step back from the ledge. A pathway to understanding and overcoming childhood trauma. I love the bonus materials and the workbook style pages. I highly recommend this educational book. And there it is. There's Michael amongst the stars. Way to go, Michael.
Man, I really appreciate that. That's beautiful, man. Thank you so much. That it really means the world to me that you take the time to do that.
Yeah.
You know, this book really, like, truthfully, like, no joke, I wrote this specifically with the sole purpose of making myself obsolete on a long enough timeline, meaning that my goal, like, is to end generational trauma in my lifetime by any means necessary. And so one day, my hope is someone will pick this book up and go, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Why would anyone ever need to read that? So thank you for being a part of my mission, man.
You're welcome, man. And you probably saw the fireworks there. We
Yeah, it's
celebrated,
awesome.
and as we produce this into a YouTube premiere and an international podcast, you'll be able to use this, and hopefully, people when they see it, that'll be the first thing they'll do is say, "Wow, that book, that little thing there that Tom wrote, we're gonna go get a copy of it." And I'm waiting for mine from my shelf, dude. But I want to get deep into the story. Go right there, everybody. I want to capture something that Michael just said. Now, you all know me, the Quiet Warrior, and my story. This is about Michael today. But I've been saying this for a long time, Michael, in my life, that Oprah says it's probably 9 out of 10. You are roughly 7 out of 10 people, which is right there, have some form of trauma from their early years. A lot of people don't even know what the heck the word trauma means. In your book, you talk about it. The part that set me on a journey in my head is when I started reading the book, I thought, okay, we're going to get to his story and there's going to be a small list of things. Dude, you got like 2 pages of shit that you went through, and it was unbelievable. And I want to, before I give it back to you, I want to say this, that everybody, when you read Michael's book, for somebody to have resilience and gone through what he went and come back to do something with this, it's just remarkable. So take us into that. Okay, let's go back to where you were born. Start there. You came into the world a golden child, and then some things happened.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so I want to say 2 things first as precursor to that. One, statistically, yes, we're probably around the 7 to 10, the 7 people of 10 being impacted by abuse. However, not factoring in non-reports, children growing up being told, if you tell these secrets of this house, it'll be worse for you, so on and so forth. I would argue, like, dude, honestly, we're probably somewhere around the window of like 95% of people being impacted by childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
you know, I think about that quite frequently, and I just think the studies are inconclusive,
Yeah.
and that bothers me. But there's no funding for them, especially in America. So, you know, it's constantly swept under the rug. The last real study around this was 20 years ago. So you think about that right now. I wrote a post that went viral beginning of last year, and it said, if I were a kid at home right now during COVID, I would be terrified because I probably wasn't going to make it out.
Crazy.
And you know, I think about that every single day. You know, my story, the book, the preface is about me because I believe you have to create context. So I want to be clear about that. But the book is not. The book is not about me. It is a guide. It is a tool. So that said, you know, to go deeper, yeah, when I was 4 years old, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, she cut my right index finger off. And now I know people always go, how could a mother do that? And I sit here and I understand why they say that. And the reality is, like, she was only doing what she had been taught. This was generational trauma. This was a cycle repeating itself. Like, I understand that now as a man, as a child, I was just like, right. And so she
Okay,
married my
hold
stepfather.
on.
Go
I
ahead.
very rarely will interrupt the guest, but when I read that in your
Go for
book, and you're what you said, man, is exactly what I thought. How could a mother do that? But I want to also say that, not minimizing that, but everybody, words can be just as powerful as a knife cutting off a limb. But what was going on in that moment? I don't want to get into morbid details and cause pain for you, man, but what was happening in that moment for her to do something like that?
Yeah, Tom, dude, I was 4 years old. It's gone forever. You know what I
Yeah. Well,
mean?
thank
And
God.
that was one of those things where it was shocking. I remember the post of it, right? I remember
Yeah.
being covered in bandages. I remember multiple trips to the hospital. I've had like 7 skin grafts.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, I know these things, but the moment, like, that's, I don't know. I hope I never remember it, but you know, if I do, I'll go to therapy. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. You know, and so when I was 6 years old, she married my stepfather. Again, this is same thing, generational trauma repeating itself. My stepfather was super abusive, dude. He would wake my brothers up in the middle of the night and beat the shit out of us when he was drunk, right? And it was stuff like that. Put me in the hospital. You know, the scariest moment in my day as a child was when the school bell rang and I had to walk the 6 minutes home. That was the scariest moment of my day. And so that was, you know, you rinse and repeat that till I'm about 8, 9 years old. And we're deeply impoverished, man. We're super poor. We're so poor that the water company came and turned our water off. Dude, I grew up in Indiana, in Indianapolis, in a city, and we were so poor they turned our water off. And one day I went in the backyard and I took this little blue bucket and I walked across the street to our neighbor's house and I stole water. And I remember in that moment being like, when I'm a grown up, this is not going to be my life.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of that. They turn off the water, they turn off the electricity, turn off the heat in the winter. We got evicted a whole bunch of times. And then at one point, I lived with, over the stretch of 2 years, around 30 different families, 30. My
My
brothers
goodness.
and I getting split up, tossed place to place to place. While my mom was in rehab, my stepfather was, I don't know, wherever the hell he was. And that was very chaotic for a while. And
Yeah.
when I was, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say that, think about that, everybody, a teaching moment on the show. If you think about your life and, everybody has their own circumstances, but in a short period of time at a young age, uh, living with 30 different families, I mean, how do you even get a sense of belonging or a sense of love and whatnot? And then the thing that's remarkable about your story, and we're going to continue with that, is there are many, many children like you, man, who don't make it out. They go to the dark side. So I've been studying a lot about why do some do what you and I do, and why do others not?
Mhm.
And I just want to give this back to you with a thought. I want to share this with you, that I really believe that you've done a lot of work to learn and accept what happened, and you're going to tell us about the book and the pathway. But I believe that you're chosen, that God chose you and put you on a path to do something with this story. Uh, I wondered, but for my own life, Michael, and I come from a childhood of violence and an alcoholic addicted father and many things like that too. I went into business, and it's funny, your mission. And in business, I climbed the ladder to management and became a CEO at a young age, which I became a train wreck. I couldn't relate to people. I took the
Mhm.
rules from my childhood into business. But what you said is so amazing. If you think it's not it's not accepted at that level, the stigma is like it's the huge elf in the room, like you said, and nobody talks about it. Yet I can tell you with a lot of integrity that in the private rooms, talking to some of these top leaders who had a lot of pressure, the blood was on their shirts. They talk about their dads. They talk about stuff, and the trauma manifested itself in how they related and were leaders in their business. And those people, they live with it. But up at that level, you just can't talk about it. So I'm going to give it back to you. Just continue with the story. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I want to touch base on that a bit more in depth with you. Let's run through this, because I
Yeah.
want to say something important about, like, this thing about living with all these families that was fascinating to me, that I actually understood in real time, was that not everybody's family was like mine.
Yeah.
And that was mind-blowing to me, because it was so stark. The contrast was so stark, because I would see a kid like talk back to their dad and not get thrown through a wall, and not get punched in the face, and not get like slammed to the ground. And I was like, what? You can do that? And I remember distinctly one time I was at this house, and this kid talked back, and his dad, this big guy, and his dad walked over to him, and I was like, oh man, this kid's about to get destroyed. And his dad like kneeled down, put his hand on his shoulder, and then said whatever. Dad, I was like, that's a thing, right? And so there was this really interesting dichotomy that was happening when I was trying to evaluate and understand, like, there's a vast difference between what my normal is and what other people's normal is. And that was mind-blowing to me. So that happened for a couple of years. And when I was 12 years old, my grandmother, she actually adopted me.
Yeah.
My mom and my stepdad got a divorce. My mom was in rehab, my stepdad, whatever. And my grandmother adopted me. And like, in one sense is a lifesaver. In the other sense, it was just like more trauma on top of the trauma. And she was this racist old white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. I mean, we had a copy of Hitler's biography, Mein Kampf, in our house, if that gives you any predication for the baseline.
That's crazy.
And my uncle was in the Aryan Nation in prison, and that goes on. And here I am, this biracial kid, black and white, Irish and West Nigerian African, and just being like totally lost in the world. And so I did what any normal 12-year-old does. I turned to drugs, and I started getting high every single day. And I started getting drunk at 13. At 15, I got expelled from school for selling drugs. And I was breaking into houses, stealing cars, running with guns, hurting people. My friends and I, dude, we were doing the gnarliest stuff, because we were just like, fuck it. Like nothing else is worse than being in our own home. So like, even if we go to prison, if we go to jail, whatever, like it wasn't it was
Yeah.
not uncommon for a Tuesday afternoon for us to be running from the cops as we were leaving someone's house with property. You know what I mean? But that felt safe. That felt communal. That felt like brotherhood to us. And that's what we did.
Can I just jump in there and something you said
Absolutely.
about brotherhood? One of my mentors, Tony Robbins, who you know and many people know, has talked a lot about adversity and overcoming it too. That there's one thing that a lot of people want, right, and that's to fit in. And I was thinking about what you said, and is that you found a tribe. You found a tribe, man, a tribe that seemed to love you. That you said the acceptance, and I sometimes think about that myself. Where would I have ended up? Because my dad left home at age 12. The house is sold. He was homeless for a bit, but I don't know, man. My heart breaks for all of those children out there who do take that path, but they end up getting lost. They don't come full circle around. There's no way they get rescued by anybody.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I want to dive into that here in a moment as well, because like that, I was totally lost. Like, well, let me go through this, and I'll give you context as to why.
Yeah.
And so I got put into this last chance program, and luckily I finally graduated high school under the circumstances of basically they're like, here's a diploma, get the hell out of here. And what happened is really interesting. I had a pivotal moment when I was 18 years old where I actually put a restraining order on my mother. And I
Wow.
told her I will never talk to you again. And Tom, I'll tell you right now, if I wouldn't have made that decision, I would not be here with you today. Like there's
Wow.
no question. It's the hardest choice I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
To this day, the hardest decision I've ever made. And I had to make a choice. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be a part of the drugs and the alcohol and the drunk driving and then endangering me and my brothers and the chaos of it all. And it was the hardest and best thing I've ever done. And
Did you
within
have
that,
did you have support to do that, or maybe I'm always curious what drove you or what motivated you? How did you come up with that idea? Because that's a big
because it
move.
was the second time I had done it. When I was 14, my grandmother actually took us to the courthouse, and I put a restraining order on my mom and my stepfather.
I see.
And what's crazy, and I wrote about it in the book, I wish I'd have put a picture of it, but there's this interesting transition when this happens, where I go from a straight F student to a straight A student. It's
Really?
crazy. You can go and look at my transcript. I think I had
Wow.
1B. Like it was like basically straight A's. And like this was me at 18 years old. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Well, what happened is my mom hit kind of this rock bottom moment. She got kicked out of a rehab. My grandma let her come live with us again. And then like clockwork, boom, right back into straight F's.
Yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
crazy. It was like night and day.
Yeah.
Well, what happened in that space was I had a teacher, Mr. Bush, shout out, who I had him as my first period business teacher. And I told him on day one, I walked to him, I was like, dude, I'm not coming to your class. It's not happening. Class starts at 7:15. I'm out selling drugs at night. I'm working at Hollywood Video as a cover job when Hollywood Video was a thing, right? And I'm like, I'm not coming to your class, dude. This is a teacher. He's 20 years in. He's seen everything. Nothing's going to surprise him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, cool, I get it. Like, check in with me, do homework. We'll figure it out. I didn't do either of those things, not one time. And so they post the graduation list. My girlfriend calls me. I'm at home. I'm stoned playing video games. And she's like, your name's not on the graduation list. And I was like, shit. And so I got in my car. I drove over to school. I already knew why. I knew it was him. I knew because I didn't do what he asked me to do.
Yeah.
I didn't create my own salvation. We're going to talk about that in a second. And so I go to school. I'm like waiting outside the classroom, waiting for this bell to ring. I'm like hyped up because I'm like fucking 18. I'm a moron. and he comes out. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? And he looks at me and Tom, I swear to God, this is the most important thing anyone in my life has ever told me, ever. He goes, what you need to understand about life is you cannot get by on your charms and your good looks. If you want something, you have to earn it. And I had to go to summer school in a school where it's impossible not to graduate. I was the
Yeah.
laughing stock, man. There was this thing called Harris Polls that came out that had this listing called the Dropout Factories. The year I graduated high school, my high school was on that list of one of the worst high schools in America. It was impossible not to pass that school, and yet I didn't.
Yeah.
So I found myself in summer school. I found myself in this position where eventually this summer school teacher was like, "We're just going to give you the diploma so you get the hell out of here." That's really what it was. He was like, "Come in, raise your hand so I can take attendance,
Yeah.
do what you want." Swear, that's exactly what it was. And I did that for like 6 weeks or whatever, and everybody was, making fun of me, and I was incredibly fucking embarrassed. And it was a lesson. It was the most important lesson I've ever learned. And so I'm sitting here in this class one day. I've never gone into depth on this story before, actually. So I'm in this classroom one day, and there's this girl that I have this crush on, and we're chatting or whatever. And I had this moment of realizing like she was never going to do anything with her life. Like I just had this preconceived, and I hope to God she did. Let me be clear about this. This was fucking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, what am I going to do with my life? And I thought to myself, I know the solution for poverty. I know the solution for homelessness and abuse and all of these things. It's money. It's got to be money, because that's always been the thing. That's always the catalyst for all the pain. And so I made a declaration to myself. I said, by the time I'm 21, I'm going to make $100,000 a year legally.
Yeah.
Now, this was super important, Tom, for two reasons. One, I have family who's in prison for life, who will never get out. Most of my family has been to jail. I've been in handcuffs. And two, as of today, my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I was a part of that. I'm not going to be that. That's not going to be my life. And so I said, what do I have to figure out how to get there? The first thing I did, because I'm a kid, I don't know better. And I only know what's around me, right?
Yeah.
I've never been exposed to corporate America. I've never been exposed to all these things. But I just thought to myself, where do I start? Maybe I'll go get a job as a manager at a fast food restaurant. That's got to be a good place to start. And so I did. I got a job as a manager and ended up being a GM, general manager in training, with 52 people underneath me at 18 years old. And I started learning.
That's pretty good responsibility for age 18, by the way.
Well, I was on my own. I didn't have a choice, right? And so I made a choice.
Yeah.
And then that started transforming my life. And I had this moment. This is crazy, because I want to talk about this thing in corporate America, right? We'll get there in a second. But I'm in this place where I'm at home one day, and I'm like messaging one of my friends on MySpace, to age myself here a bit. And and he goes, "Dude, I just got a job working for an insurance company." I was like, "You can do that?" Because we graduated from the same high school.
Yeah.
He grew up my neighbor. Like we were awesome close friends as kids. And I was like, "Oh my God, wait, you can wear a suit and tie to work when you're like 19? Cool." My goal, Tom, make $100,000 a year by the time I'm 21. Well, sure enough, fast forward a couple more years. Right as I'm turning 21, I land a job with a Fortune 10 company. No high school diploma, no college education. I start making 6 figures, and my life gets worse. It's that story. You've heard it a million times. The people who've never had money, who get money, destroys them. And,
Well,
that was me.
I want to jump in there, hit the pause button for a minute. Man, it's an amazing story. I want to honor you and tell you I love you and your story, for your transparency and your teaching through the story. For those watching this, come back, listen to it, watch the video, everybody. There's nuggets in this connected to Michael's book, which we'll talk about again. That why I want to riff on this is every time you say something, my brain goes on a journey. So I there's a saying I've heard. It says you can't, how's it go? It says in order to have authority, you have to be able to be under authority. And I grew up with a military commanding officer dad who is a chronic, ridiculous, drunk and violent guy. So they're command and control. I'll kick your butt if you don't get things done. Got to get triple A's in school. Chores were like 8 hours a day when all my buddies were playing street hockey. And I took the brunt of it. I have 2 brothers, so I sometimes say black and blue kid. That's kind of what my motto was. And it's funny, you said something earlier that when you met other families, it was like that for me. When I started going to my buddy's house and looking at what happened around their dinner table, or when they would screw up, how their parents would react, it was the same thing. It's like, man, I thought what was going on in my house was the way it is, but there's something not right here. And then I had to find mentors in my life because my dad left. And my mom was always on medication and probably dealing with mental illness. She was sick. She's in the hospital a lot. When she was younger in Fiji, when my parents met and were married, my dad threw her in a fireplace and hurt her pretty good. That's during his drinking days. Now, I want to say this. I found only recently my dad passed away at 18. I had coffee with him 3 months before. God said, Tom, you got to go and do something with this. And there was forgiveness. And I heard about my dad's story. And my dad grew up with an alcoholic. My grandfather, never met him. He died in front of my dad. So that was the first time I realized, Michael, that looking in the eyes of my dad, that's what, if I had made the same choices, that's the man I might have become. And my dad just did the best with what he had. He came out of the womb and he was perfect, and he was shaped that way through his experience, and he brought it into my life. A couple more things I just want to say on this is that I had mentors, and these were all Caucasian people and, teachers and business. I was picked on for the color of my skin in that age, and this is in Canada. And so people said, you're pretty smart. You can type 55 words a minute. You need to go into business. The exact same thing happened to me. That's why I love this story. And I said, I'm so connected to the threads in yours. I go into corporate North America and I climbed the ladder fast. I think at age 31, I became a CEO for the first time, but I was broken. And what I realized, and this is something I learned just again through one of the mentors I had, Tony Robbins, that, and I said it recently in a talk I did, that I was a self-worth chaser. So I had all the money, but I was actually tearing down my success, and I didn't until I unraveled it all. I didn't get it, but I was going in and I was achieving, and people on the outside said, "Wow, you're so successful." But I was tearing it down as if, number one, I can't handle authority, so I'm pushing it away because authority to me was like a trigger. And number two, I'm not worthy of $100,000 income. So every time it came unconsciously, I would do things to screw something up. And so we're at that point in your story. I'll give it back to you. Just keep going, because hold up the book again and let's hear the title.
Yeah, so it's Think Unbroken: Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma. So this is on all the things. I also recorded audiobook for it as well. So, but it's also free at the library. So like, go get the book.
That's
like,
cool.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
and let's turn into that. There was one part in the book. It said you have to. I think it was a teaching moment for me. You have to accept who you are. You have to accept what it was that you went through. That it's no fault of your own or something like that. And then you set out to do some things, which created, I guess, the blueprint you have in your book. Take us through some of that.
I think the best way to do that is to go through this next phase of this story of my background, because I think that's the gap we're trying to bridge here.
Okay.
So I'm in corporate America and I'm making six figures, and much like you, it's this thing where I'm just like, I'm still miserable. I'm drinking every night. I'm smoking 2 packs a day. I'm getting high when I wake up in the morning before I go to work. I'm 300.
Man, how did you ever even function at work? That's crazy,
dude. Because I'm just like, it was native. I mean, I'd been getting high since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That was just my default.
Yeah.
And so, we're making all this money. I'm living paycheck to paycheck.
Wow.
Making 6 figures, right? Because I'm blowing it. I got $2,000 a month tab at the bar I live above. It's like Cheers, it's crazy. And I had this just total breakdown moment, man. I was like, money was supposed to solve all these problems. It was supposed to fix the pain, fix the suffering, fix the abuse, fix the loss, fix the no having confidence or self-worth. My idea was like, man, it'd be really cool. I'm going to take people out. I'm going to take women out on dates that are like $500, because that'll be the way to make people like me. And I'm going to hook up with strangers because that'll be the way to make myself feel full. And I was just destroying my life. And then one night I put a gun in my mouth.
Yeah, I read that in your book, and
dude.
I remember reading that in the book, man, and my heart stopped, and I went, geez, I think you said something like you remember the taste of the metal. It's like to be on the edge like that. Tell us how you got off that. Something happened to the gun, I think.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things where I think about this all the time, man. I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I did the thing I thought I was supposed to do because I
And
didn't
you
have
didn't.
mentors.
Yeah.
I didn't have coaches. I didn't have guides. I didn't have anybody in front of me to look. I was trying to do everything on my own because
Yeah.
that was my default. Like I was like, if I'm not doing this on my own, it won't get done. I won't figure it out. I'll never be
Yep.
safe. And that is the worst thought process anyone could ever have in this, because you can't do this alone. It's fucking impossible.
Yeah.
And so the next day, I'm in bed. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds. I'm eating chocolate cake.
Wait a minute. You're 350. Look at you now.
I know. I had to do some damn work, Tom. So I'm 350 pounds,
Wow.
eating chocolate cake, smoking a joint, and watching the CrossFit games. Like if that's not rock bottom, dude, I don't know what is. And
That
this
sounds
was
like that sounds like a COVID lifestyle to me.
dude, no kidding, right? And so I walk in the bathroom because here's what happened. I'll never forget this. I'm watching these guys, these athletes, these superhumans. I'm going, what do they know that I don't know? Why are they able to do this? I'm not. And I'm standing in the bathroom. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. And I remember that moment of 8 years old of taking that bucket across the street and saying, this won't be my life.
Wow.
And I asked myself this question. I'll never understand why. It just happened. I go, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the words, no excuses, just results, just started reverberating through my body.
Love that.
And that became everything that was next. Because what it really boiled down to was, I'm done negotiating with myself.
Yeah.
I'm done letting myself off the hook. I'm done getting in my own way. I'm done allowing all of the people who came before me to dictate what is next in my life. It's time for me to take fucking ownership, to acknowledge that, yes, I was hurt, but it is not my fault. But to look at my life in the moment and say, everything around you is your own doing. And that was a hard moment of reckoning. Because what it was I had to recognize and realize I had been playing the victim.
Yeah.
I didn't have the words for that then. That was over a decade ago, right? I didn't have the words. I was a kid still. And I was like, I'm playing the victim. Do something about it.
Yeah.
And that led me down this path where I was like, I'm going to go get serious about therapy. I'm going to go get serious about group therapy, men's group therapy, trauma-informed therapy, CBT, NLP, EMDR, ABC, all the acronyms, right? I'm going to go get a coach. I'm going to read the books. I'm going to go to the conferences. Dude, I used to laugh at Tony Robbins. I'm like, fuck this guy. What? And like this, in 2 weeks, I'm taking my partner and my brothers, and we're going to go to Tony Robbins. I'm taking them to expose them, to be like, see this, because they ain't gonna listen to me anyway. And so I'm like, maybe you'll get it from him. And because I'm just trying to end this cycle, man. I'm trying to pull my family out. I'm trying to create this massive change. And it's an uphill battle. There's still work to be done.
Yeah.
And so I just started that process again and again and again, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And there were a lot of fall downs, a lot of mistakes, a lot of doing the thing I said I'd never do again, a lot of old behavior patterns, because it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. And this first thing I always teach my clients is like, man, you got to be patient. You got to be patient in the macro, but in the micro, you got to be aggressive. And on a long enough timeline, your life will be different. My life is different than 12 years ago.
I bet. And I just want to jump in and just say, first of all, I love your story and I honor you, man, for making that shift. I wrote a couple of things down here. Everybody come back and listen to this segment that we just talked. No excuses, just results. And I go back to think about the hero's journey, which is the narrative behind this show, Joseph Campbell's work. They call it the call to adventure. And I think I had the call to go on an adventure a few times in my life. One was when I was a kid, being beat on and all that crap in my home, but I didn't answer the call. And what I've learned is they say, when you get to a point, there's always a triggering point when there's so much pain. You get to so much pain, you say, you just get angry. You say, I don't want that pain anymore. I want to get out of it. Sadly, I've known people to commit suicide, take their lives, who never were able to make that choice. And then you went on a journey, I call it, from reading your book, man, seeking. It's funny you mentioned Tony Robbins, because when I first met him, this was 20 years ago, through his work, the guy was just telling stories and saying, I'm nobody special. I just started reading books, and he read like 700 books. Mm-hmm. Well, you can get a university degree by reading books, and there's a lot of knowledge out there. What I like about your story and what you're teaching us is you went and made the conscious choice to want to be enough. But I love the other thing you said, which is, it's not who you really were. The things that were put in you were circumstances around you. But the other moment of vulnerability, everybody, that I heard Michael you say, which is hard, by the way, because most men won't do it. I know certainly in business, is you fell on your sword and you said, I'm going to stop playing victim. I had a coach once that said, actually, Tony said, from today on, you will never tell your bullshit story again. And so I was going through my mind, nothing ever works out because my dad would beat on me. Nothing ever works out because I lost my family. When I made that choice myself to say, suck it up, Tom, no more excuses. And then, and a coach at that time said this, which I never forgot. I want to share it with you because we're connected for life now. I never forget it, man. They looked me in the eyes and said, every situation you're in, Tom, is a direct result of the choices you made. And I couldn't get it. Honestly, I just didn't get it until I started going down the path to try to, and I had to get help and go through that. And everybody, I want you to pay attention to what he said, what Michael said about it takes time. So I'll give it back to you, dude, because I know that every day for you and me and others is a journey.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people have to understand is it is a journey. The question I get asked all the time, Tom, is like, well, when are you not going to have to do the work anymore? And the answer is when you're dead. Like that's when you don't have to do the work anymore because like, guess what? We're the sum total of all of our experiences leading up to this moment. So that means that everything that's ever happened to you in your life informs who you are. And to pretend that those things of the past didn't happen is dismissive. To say that you weren't impacted by the teacher, by the principal, by the kid, by the bully, by the parent, by the one like think about this. We all have one moment that in passing, most people would look at and go, that, whatever. But to you, that became a turning point, right? And we forget that matters still. And so I'm always just trying to tap into what's next. And I think about this often, how much it's important to recognize that your future is truly in your hands. See, and one of the things I love that Tony says is like, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And I believe that. I didn't used to. I'd be like, that's why I used to be like, fuck Tony Robbins. I told him that. Like, I was like, I used to be like, fuck you, man. Like, who are you? What do you know?
Yeah.
And then you recognize and you understand something that all of the people who do great things have in common. They set their mind on a goal, on a target, and they move towards it while failing all the time.
Yeah.
Again and again.
And you're a guy who knows how to fail because you've been through it.
I fail all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly a struggle. Yeah. It always will be. People are like, man, you're an award-winning speaker, you're a best-selling author, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, do you know how many times I've fucked up to get to that place? Like a bazillion. Do you know how many times I made mistakes? All the time. But the difference is when you use that information as data and you go, oh, okay, a factor in my character, but instead helps me derive a new hypothesis of how it is that I solve for the equation of if I do this, that happens. Then you use that data and it becomes transformational in your life. Because it's one thing, because look, we all are a measure of ourselves. I think that the biggest narrative in the storytelling of life is it is a you versus you narrative. Yeah. But one of the reasons, and I want to go into something practical here, and I need a moment to go through it so people can understand it. One of the biggest reasons that people fail and then don't succeed on the backside of the failure is because they're holding themselves to something that's just unattainable, and that is perfection. And in that, what happens, and you hear this all the time, but I'm going to dive into this in a way that's actually practical for people. In front of me, there is a sign. You cannot see it because it's in front of me, and it says mindset is everything. But the thing about mindset that people don't understand, because all we ever hear is mindset, 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 mindset. Nobody ever defines it. So I'm going to define it for you so you understand it. What you think becomes what you speak become your action, and your actions become your reality. And right now, you're holding yourself to this idea that A, if you're not perfect, then you will never be successful. And B, and more importantly, you are being more mean and unkind to yourself than anyone on planet Earth. Because the stories that you tell yourself matter. And there are things that you're telling to yourself right now that if you said to me, I would punch you in the face. right? Or you would get arrested. Think about that. How are you going to be successful in life if that is your baseline narrative for what's next? So I want to give you something really practical here. The most important tool in anyone's arsenal is the pen. Like, I mean, this is not hyperbole. I fucking mean this. You're going to take this pen and a piece of paper, and you're going to write this down. And then you're going to convince yourself that it is true.
Yeah.
And you're going to say this to yourself every day until it holds true. It's very simple. You're going to take this pen, this piece of paper, and you're going to change your life today, starting with this. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. Why? Why does that matter, Tom? Because the stories we tell ourselves shape our reality.
Yeah.
And if you're telling yourself this story of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable enough, nobody likes me, I'm not lovable, blah, 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 it's going to be true. And then when you start telling yourself the scope of the narrative of I am the kind of person who is kind to myself, what you think becomes what you speak, and what you speak become your action become your reality, then you will start acting in accordance through the frame of a person who is kind to themselves. Meaning, and this is the most important part, that you are going to start challenging the bullshit narrative that you have set inside of yourself that you are not capable because someone else told you that that was true. And here's how it works, because you're going to ask yourself, when facing difficulty in life, when facing fear, when in this position of trying to go to the next level, what would a person of kindness do? Because I promise you this, they wouldn't let themselves off the hook. You've got to get deep into this with yourself and really recognize, are you taking care of yourself or are you taking it easy on yourself? Because these are two very different things. And if you want to be successful in life, let me tell you this, taking it easy on yourself is not going to get you there. Now, I know what's going to happen. People are going to email me. They're going to text me. They're going to send you a message. This trauma guy is being really hard about life. I sure am. You want to know why? Because the only way you create massive change in your life is by creating massive change in your life. You want a fucking Disney moment to come. It ain't happening. The only way you're going to have success is you're going to have to take action. And if you take action through the scope of kindness on a long enough timeline, your life will be different.
That's awesome. I want to jump in here, man. Such teaching moments on the show. Everybody, we're talking to Michael Anthony, the award-winning speaker, coach, author of a new book called Think Unbroken. He's going to tell us how to get that book. You want to get it, give it a review. You've seen my review if you've watched the beginning of this. I wrote this down as you were telling us to write it down, and everybody come back and do it again. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. One of the things that when you were saying that I went on this journey in my head that so relates to this is I didn't realize that I don't know if you know this, Michael, because not sure if I told you in my notes to you, but in August 2018, my dad died in January from a heart attack unexpectedly after we received forgiveness. So I became freer. And I decided to do something different. So I did the Ride to Conquer Cancer, which is 2 days on my bicycle, 225K, with a buddy who lost a daughter to leukemia. And first night I slipped in a bathtub, fell backwards, cracked the hole in the tub, and got a serious brain injury. So I'm 3 years past it now. I still have double vision as I'm talking to you. Cognitive thoughts are scrambled. And they sent me through CBT. And I'm not an authority. I mean, you are like a maven with your knowledge, but I think I'm learning a little bit, and I started learning through my own development how the brain really works. Didn't realize that up till about age 15 or so, there's this part of it, the prefrontal cortex, that if my dad said, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, my brain wired it into the neurons in my head that's truth. They couldn't tell the difference. And when I meet leaders today or people who are in business, that's my tribe, dude, they've got this unconscious pattern of thinking going on, which is exactly what Michael's telling us. It's unconscious. You don't know what goes on. So you're not perfect. And I kind of chuckled in my mind, and I'll finish with this and one other point. When you said, do the hard work, I love it, man. I love you for saying that, because developing character, which is developing strengths, getting rid of the negatives, it's hard work. But then the reason why I chuckled is when I think about, oh, can I write this down and say it over and over to myself? How hard is that compared to when I was being beat up and criticized and put down for the first third of my life? That ain't hard. I can do this. I mean, this is hard work to do it consistently, but I'll do it. Um, so I want to finish and just give it back to you on this point. So as we move to wrapping up shortly, that it's such a blessing to have you give us that one lesson. I want to plug the book. In the book, there was a downloadable PDF. There was places where it became like an educational tool. Everybody, all of this is in Michael's book, and you got to get it. There was such extra value you gave us there, and I'm going to take some of these tools away, and you just touched the surface to help with what I'm trying to do. The last thing I want to say is that when you talk about it taking time, I'm learning now. I'm going to a brain clinic where they're teaching me neuroplasticity. I didn't realize how much our brains are plastic and you can rewire thought patterns. But dude, it's hard. They're teaching me to rewalk a straight line. I'm first time I've said that on a show. I guess he brought it out of me. But I lost my ability to walk straight. My gait was crooked. I couldn't stand on one leg. So I'm in this clinic, walking a straight line, being concentrating, learning how to do it over again. And then I had this little voice yesterday in the clinic that said, repetition, repetition. The mother of skill is repetition. That's all we're doing. Is you're teaching us these amazing things, but we're doing it over and over and over. I mean, if you can light up a joint and do that over and over and over, surely we can learn to say a few things like this. And the last part of this is self-compassion or self-care. They told me to do this, and I want to share this with you. That they said, okay, think about a time when somebody got injured or somebody got hurt, and how you treated them, right? So I thought about a time where my daughter, she's 24 now in university, back on the other side of the country. Haven't seen her for 2 years. I miss her because of COVID. She was young, coming down on a toboggan down a hill, and she went into a chain link fence and cut her thing here. And so we took her to the OR, and I almost fainted because I can't handle blood, although I can watch movies with blood. I'm a bit of a wimp, and my wife's there. And I was just being so kind to her, and I was saying everything's going to be okay. And then they said, think about a time when you screwed up, when you felt shame, when you did something, when you failed. How kind were you to yourself? And I thought about that, Michael. It's exactly what reminded me of what you just taught us. I was being a jerk. You're a loser, Tom. You should have put in more time. How could you do that? Nobody's going to think well of you. So I had to learn how to be kind to other people. And when I finally learned that, to be kind to others is the beginning of being kind to yourself. Man, that started changing my life. So thank you for teaching us that. Listen, we'll take a few more minutes. Give us anything else out of the book, any other nuggets, and then we're going to honor you. I got something for you before we move to wrap up.
Yeah, and look, and one more parlay on that kindness piece. Keep in mind, like when we're kids, when we're growing up, when we're teenagers, when we're in our 20s, like whatever, people are always telling you narrative. They're always telling you what you should be, what you're supposed to be, who you
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
You have to decide that. And that's what's scary. I ended up I've been an entrepreneur really my entire life. I run 3 companies right now. I'm the SVP of international sales and marketing for an 8-figure business on top of Think Unbroken, on top of the podcast, on all the things that I do. And the one thing that I've found that has become the only reason that I've been able to get any type of success in my life is because I don't let other people dictate my reality.
Awesome.
Here's what I'll say is the last practical thing, because it's easy and it's simple to talk about. In this moment, people may not necessarily understand it, but it's this. And when you understand it, it'll really change your life. I only do what I want to do, and I never do what I don't want to do.
Wow.
And that's really important. Now, in the minutia of life, there's tedious stuff you gotta do. That's just life. Like I gotta make dinner. I gotta order groceries, blah, blah. That's how lazy I am. I'm like, order groceries now. I didn't say go to the grocery store. We're in a different age. I'm like, I gotta order groceries. It's a nightmare. And
hey, I order mine too. They arrive at 10 o'clock every Monday morning.
Yeah, I love it. It's actually, as an entrepreneur, it's a huge benefit.
The time saving, right? It's
yeah,
amazing.
100% correct. But that said, like I think about this, like I'm always pulled in directions. People are always like, hey, come on my show, or come and do this, or come and do that, or speak at this event. And I'm like, is this in alignment with my values, with my mission, with my vision, with my core, with my integrity, with who I am? Because if it's not, I say no 100% of the time, every single time. And if it is, then I say yes. And if you can get to this place in your life where you say yes to only the things you want to say yes to and no only to the things that you want to say no to, your life will be very, very different, because we get pulled in all these directions. I
Yeah.
see this all the time in business. People are always succumbing to this idea that they need to do what everybody else is doing, and they get in their own way. And I'm like, if you just trust your gut, if you trust your instinct, if you learn how to tap back into that thing that's taken from us, if you learn how to navigate that, you will be good.
I think that's such a great teaching moment. I experienced that personally, going up the ladder in corporate America when I was at my toughest jobs. That I said yes to everything, and it's interesting you said that, because I read a quote by Warren Buffett, who's, I guess, a guy that has seen success and failure, and he goes, "The most successful people in life say no to everything." I got that, but I got it through like when my daughter went to university. We had to take her to the other side of the country. For the first time, she sat on my lap and she said, "Well, you were never here." Because for 5 years, I made the conscious choice to take a top job and travel a lot. And if I had a vision back then of what I wanted my life to be, like you've just taught us, Michael, I could have said, okay, take that job. My vision of my life is to have a loving family and be present. Nah, I'm not going to take it. I'll find a top job here. So it's such an amazing thing. And sadly, I assume most people don't even take the time to figure out what they want or their vision. That's amazing. We're gonna move to getting the last word from you in a minute here, buddy. But I want to honor you with something. I don't know if you know you were getting an award today, but now you know. So I'm gonna full screen me for a minute. He's going, "Why are you doing that?" It's about me. And I said, "Well, just give me a minute." All right. What you see on the screen there behind me is an image. It's been there. There's a guy, looks like somebody I know. He's got a bit of hair though. And that is actually what we call a challenge coin. If you haven't heard of these, they were created in World War II. I've had these hand minted and painted and created in the United States. They're rare and nothing's like them. And these were used in World War II by soldiers to commit to each other, community. And today, all around the world, first responders, Alcoholics Anonymous with my dad, where my dad was for 22 years before he passed, these coins exist. When I started the show, I said, I want freak flags coming to the show, people who have had trauma and crap happen, but are willing to talk about it and show how they've turned it around to create a purposeful mission to help other people. That's why the less than 50 of these a year are rewarded. So welcome to the Quiet Warrior Tribe. You're going to get this as a word, and by holding it, you must commit to keep the purpose you've found, keep taking action, man, and to create the life that you deserve and desire, and blessing other people. So welcome to the tribe.
Man, that's beautiful. Thank you very much, my friend. I think serendipity is so interesting to me because last night I was talking to one of my mentors and we were talking about community. And it was just like, the reason why I do these shows, why I have my own podcast, why everything, because it's about community. It's about brotherhood. It's about literally the same thing I was trying to find when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so it is my honor. And thank you very much, my friend. That literally means I'm super excited. Like I'm pumped now. I'm like, yes.
Well, you're welcome. I'll be forwarding as soon as the mail gets going properly. I'll get my book out to you so you can learn about me, get the award. And also, we're going to put this back up, everybody. The book we're talking about is this one, Think Unbroken. There's Michael Amongst the Stars. I've written a 5-star review on it. The most real book in a decade. I'm serious. That's the most real book I've read in a decade, by somebody who's revealing their story and actually making some personal change. So fantastic. Get it and give it a review. Last word to you, man. Where can people get a hold of you and all your stuff?
Yeah, man. So, and thank you again for that review, for everything. This has been amazing conversation.
You're welcome.
So I'm everywhere on social media at Michael Unbroken. That is on all the platforms, Michael Unbroken. And you can find out everything that I do, coaching, the app, the book, the podcast, everything is at thinkunbroken.com. That's Think Unbroken. It's also Think Unbroken podcast. And so Think Unbroken, it's everywhere for you.
Fantastic. I've been to your website, and it's one of the best put together websites that I've seen in a long time. And actually, I love how you've packaged everything. I didn't realize, everything that you did with the 3 companies, but dude, you're doing awesome stuff. And I just want to share this little secret with you. When I get behind this mic and I meet guys like you, I feel like I'm at home, because you said, because I can't go out in the real world and have this conversation with a VP or a CEO buddy of mine because they just don't get it. So I really appreciate the tribe that we're building, and we'll be collaborating and connected for life. So thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll have you back again.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
All right, everybody, find that true purpose like you hear from Michael. Take action and live the life that you deserve and desire. Okay, just stand by. We're ending the broadcast.